Tingyu was selected by an inexplicable survival game and became an ordinary beta player. Game original art style. A natural disaster that alternates between cold and hot, dreaming of a childlike hunting festival, bloody and carnivorous underground fighting beasts, the cold mechanical island prison. Tingyu's art style after playing the game. Player. Damn it. Sigma, winky face. Dungeon boss. Don't come over. Oh, dungeon administrator. It's just a broken dungeon, not a big problem. Bullshit. #M, game invigilator. Identification completed, this player is toxic. CP, Tingyu times Chin Lin, big fish eats 7 or 7, deceiving and kidnapping. Coaxing. PS, the female protagonist is a bug, a dungeon killer, and a cheating fairy. The male protagonist has disabled legs, a brain problem, and a pitiful reality. All members of the protagonist group are villains, professional troublemakers, and have a lot of fun in sand sculpture. Survival game unlimited flow, 1v1, double cleanliness, easy to write, slightly humorous, non-horror writing. Keywords of the novel. When there is no pop-up window for a bug in survival games, when there is a bug in survival games, download the complete set of TXT, and when there is a bug in survival games, read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Tingyu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Tingyu. Oh. A few seagulls flew low over the sea surface. The waves rolled and splashed against the beach, while the morning sunlight shone on the seawater, shimmering with a diamond-like glow. A seagull flew over the beach and landed on the second-floor balcony of a seaside villa, bowing its head to comb its feathers with its beak. Intermittently, a light and pure melody echoed from the small villa. The originally energetic seagull seemed to be drunk, swaying back and forth before finally falling onto the balcony and lying motionless on the ground. The song lingered in the small villa, and the dozen or so goldfish in the living room fish tank sank to the bottom of the water without any movement. Little ancestor, are you ready for the last song of the album? Your fans are constantly urging on Weibo. The beautiful singing in the room was interrupted, and the owner of the song replied, I know. A young girl turned off the call and continued to use a fruit knife to slice fruits. Suddenly, she noticed that her feet were a bit heavy. She lowered her head and glanced down, and a white-haired Tuha was lying on her feet, snoring soundly. Accidentally, the girl cut her finger and blood flowed out. Ah! The girl exclaimed softly, without any pain coming from her hands. If she hadn't seen the bleeding with her own eyes, she wouldn't have noticed it. The girl's name is Tingyu, and her parents are unknown. She is 20 years old this year, standing 1.56 meters tall, and has a cute appearance. She is a reliable little fairy. At the age of 16, she posted a solo hypnosis song online and became famous overnight, then inexplicably debuted. In the past 4 years, she has not appeared in public and has become the top singer in the industry with her sweet and healing voice alone, earning the nickname of Angel's Kiss. The whole internet knows that Tingyu's singing can hypnotize and even ignore species, even more effective than sleeping pills, which can be considered a bug, but no one knows that she has a disease. She has no pain sensation. Just as I applied a bandage to the wound, Tingyu suddenly saw a semi-transparent panel in front of her, with several lines of text popping up on it. Welcome to Parallel Park. Congratulations on being selected as the third batch of beta players. You can experience being a normal person and enjoy a happy life in the game. Dungeon difficulty 1 to 13 stars, game pain realism. 100%, any level of damage received in the game will not affect reality. In the game, if a player dies, a certain amount of game currency will be deducted. Players with game currency of 0 will receive a mouse tail juice. Click to enter the game. Before Tingyu could react, the click to enter game button on the panel actually clicked on itself, giving no chance to be rejected. The surrounding light suddenly disappeared into darkness, and Su Tingyu didn't move at all, but he felt like he was no longer in the villa. The semi-transparent panel emitted a bright light, and Su Tingyu looked left and right. She was now in a square purple space. A few lines of text on the panel have been refreshed. Detecting player information, detected that you are participating in this game for the first time, please create a game character, please fill in your nickname. Su Tingyu blinked her big eyes, pondered for a few seconds, and entered Mary Sue in the nickname box. The nickname is already in use. Oh, my goodness, come again. Dad Sue, the nickname is already in use, good guy. Who dares to be her father? Su Tingyu thought of his good name in the circle, so he entered Angel Sue in the nickname box. Successfully established nickname, player information has been detected, nickname. Angel Sue, gender. Female, age. 20, number. 444444, level. 0/100, game coin. 0, item list. Currently unavailable. Su Tingyu raised his eyebrows slightly, the game number. It's really lucky. 2 seconds later, the panel refreshes again, physical symptoms. Painlessness, disability index. Comprehensive evaluation. Madness. Su Tingyu knows she has painlessness, but what is the disability index? My entire body parts are in good condition, and I estimate there is still a shelf life of several decades. It's not yet the time to return to the factory, so where is this residue? Where is it missing? Also, as a kind and law-abiding singer who is passionate about promoting positive energy, where did she go crazy? Game instance is starting. Su Tingyu watched helplessly as the progress bar filled up, and a Enter Dungeon button popped up on the panel. She also thoughtfully helped her click it down again. Su Tingyu's eyes darkened. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Li Mingshan 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Li Mingshan 1, copy. Li Mingshan, background. You are a high school student who went to the Dawn Mountain camping with 2 teachers and 50 classmates in your class. The surrounding area is sparsely populated, and the mountain road is winding and difficult to navigate. It is 5 kilometers away from the nearest bus stop, and players are not allowed to leave Li Ming Mountain for 7 days. Number of players. 5, main task. 7 days later, leave Li Mingshan alive, friendly reminder. It's getting dark, please keep a distance, difficulty. 2 stars, duration. 7 days, clearance reward. After completing the game, settle the game coins and have a probability of obtaining game props and lottery opportunities. The darkness melted, and the panel in front of her closed. Su Tingyu blinked and looked around. A bus is in motion, and many students inside are discussing this camping trip. Su Tingyu sat on the left side of the third to last row by the window. Through the window, there were layers of mountains and dense forests outside. In the deep blue sky, there was no trace of white clouds, and the sun was slanting westward. Waves of sunlight shone brightly on the earth, leaving everything silent. Su Tingyu's current appearance and attire are the same as reality, but the female student sitting next to her has no reaction. Su Tingyu pulled open the bandage on her finger and found that the wound had completely healed, with only blood stains remaining on the inner layer of the bandage. Thinking of the introduction at the beginning of the game, Su Tingyu tentatively pinched his arm. In an instant, a strange tingling sensation came from his arm. Is this pain? Now, inexplicably entering this game, Su Tingyu can only pass the level first and see if he can return to reality. By the way, where are the other players? Su Tingyu pretended to casually look left and right, observing every visible face outside the visual blind spot. On the right side of the 3 rows in front of Su Tingyu, there is a man in his early 20s who is suspected to be a player. His expression is indifferent and there is no enthusiasm from the people around him. A simple white long shirt paired with black pants gives the impression that he is dressed tightly without revealing any skin. Just as Su Tingyu looked away, the man seemed to feel something and suddenly looked over. Su Tingyu. Man. Suddenly caught, Su Tingyu's face was as steady as an old dog, and he smiled friendly at the other person. The man just frowned and turned his head without much reaction. Su Tingyu also discovered a suspected player, who was a middle-aged man with a big belly and a mouth full of stubble. His eyes were shining brightly and he was secretly observing the situation inside the car. The other two players, Su Tingyu, have not been found yet. Half an hour later, the bus stopped at the foot of Mount Liming. After getting off the car, Su Tingyu carried a hiking bag on his back and placed a pink and tender suitcase at his feet. Belonging to the player's luggage, all have a cursor with the player's nickname, and NPCs cannot see the cursor except for the player. The luggage arrived and the player's identity was also exposed. There are two remaining players, one is a otaku with dark circles and messy hair. There is also an imperial sister who exudes a charming temperament throughout her body, dressed in a red dress, bold and unrestrained, like a blooming red rose. The female teacher is organizing a team to prepare for going up the mountain, while the male teacher is going to talk to the driver. The position of Su Tingyu Station is not far from the bus, and the conversation between the driver and the male teacher can be heard in my ears. According to our previous agreement, we will pick up the person in 7 days, said the male teacher. No problem, be careful when you come to Dawn Mountain camping. Although there are no wild beasts on the mountain, strange sounds always come from the mountain after dark. Over a decade ago, there were people living nearby, but they all moved out later. It's a new era now, there shouldn't be so many mysterious things. They should be caused by some small animals moving at night on the mountain. The male teacher didn't pay much attention to what the driver said. Anyway, be careful, the driver said no more and drove away in the bus. Su Tingyu withdrew his gaze and thought to himself, is there anything unclean on the mountain? Will it threaten the lives of players? I can't leave Mount Liming for 7 days, isn't it just a matter of being slaughtered? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Dawn Mountain 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Dawn Mountain 2 Liming Mountain is an abandoned scenic spot, with a stone staircase built earlier leading all the way to the top of the mountain. The stone ladder is covered with many withered branches and rotten leaves, and the dense forests around it grow vigorously. The green leaves on many branches block the sunlight and leave a shadow. The forest is quiet, with only occasional rustling sounds, resembling the crawling sound of some small animal on the grassland. Halfway up the mountain, everyone rested in place, and 5 players took the opportunity to gather together. There is no player competition in this instance, let's get to know each other. The middle-aged man started by saying, just call me Boss Chow. This is the 4th game I have entered. Upon hearing this, the woman in the red dress's eyes lit up and she said, aren't you new to this game? Newcomer. Boss Chow shook his caterpillar-like thick eyebrows. This is also my first time entering. I was fighting against the king at home and was pulled in. The otaku seemed to have found an organization, venting his inner panic. Su Tingyu silently raised his paw and said, I'm also a newcomer. Only the last man remained, standing quietly in the corner, silent, staring down at the ground. Boss Chow automatically assigned the man to the ranks of newcomers. In front of a group of newcomers, Boss Chow straightened his chest and exuded the demeanor of a big shot. Boss, please take me flying. Chow, you're amazing. Can you take care of him? Boss Chow, who was overjoyed by the newcomers, generously shared some gaming experiences with a few people. Players need to complete the main quest to enter the dungeon, and can only return to reality after the dungeon is completed. If the dungeon fails to clear, you need to pay the corresponding game currency. Once the game currency is not enough to pay, you will enter the penalty dungeon for the first time, and die directly in reality for the second time. The game takes care of new players, and if the first round of dungeons fails, game coins will not be deducted. In addition, when other players enter their own 2-meter range, they can check the opponent's panel. The distance between the 5 players is currently within 2 meters, which meets the condition to open the opponent's panel. Su Tingyu clicked into someone else's panel and could only see the game nickname of 4 people. Boss Chow loves his wife, staying up late without balding, light as smoke Chin Chi. The first 2 are game nicknames for middle-aged men, and otaku. The third one is a woman in a red dress. The last one is the silent bag-grabbing man. After resting, the team set off again and finally reached the mountaintop before the sun set. The male teacher said, "First, set up the tent." The girl goes to the forest to pick up firewood and find a water source, while the boy goes to get supplies. Everyone's luggage only includes clothing and daily necessities, while 7 days of food, kitchenware, lighting equipment, etc. have been arranged to be manually transported to the mountain in advance. Chin Chi was the first to set up his tent and then left the camp. Boss Chow and Bald Brother worked together to build a tent, and Su Tingyu asked several male students to help set up the tent. As light as smoke, Su Tingyu followed suit when he asked for NPC help. After setting up the tent, the 4 of them gathered together. Boss Chow said, "Go to the nearby area first and find clues. Come back before dark." "Brother Chow, let me come with you." Kingrian's face was timid. The NPC has already assigned tasks, and this low-star dungeon usually won't have any problems if it conforms to the NPC in the early stage. Boss Chow, with a friendly attitude, imparted his experience to the newcomers. "You girls work together, don't trust the NPC too much." Boss Chow sneered at the recent practice of 2 female players seeking help from NPCs. The dungeon vaguely suggests that there is a problem with this group of NPCs, and even eagerly posts it. These 2 new female players are really stupid. As light as smoke, he dared not disobey the only old player present, so he had to follow Su Tingyu to pick up firewood. In the forest, occasionally 1 or 2 wild rabbits run out and disappear with a whoosh, while bird calls hover overhead. "Hey, there's a pile of dry firewood on the ground. Just pick some and go back quickly. Where else do you want to go?" Following Su Tingyu, Kingrian's face was full of annoyance. "Looking for clues, why don't you go back first?" Su Tingyu kindly suggested. Upon hearing this, the woman in the red dress left without looking back. Su Tingyu entered the depths of the forest, and the chirping of birds gradually disappeared. The lush branches and leaves on top of his head blocked the sunlight, and the model tree shadows fell on the dark soil. Occasionally, the breeze blew, and the tree shadows on the ground swayed gently. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Dawn Mountain 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 5. Dawn Mountain 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Dawn Mountain 4. Chin Chi frowned lightly, his voice seeming to have a hint of doubt. "In the car, why are you laughing?" "Ah." Su Tingyu's large, spiritual eyes froze for a moment. Thinking it was Su Tingyu who didn't understand, Chin Chi paused every word and repeated with serious eyes, "In the car, you smiled at me. Why is that?" Su Tingyu. Why? Are you asking me? Who am I asking? Chin Chi. Stay tuned. In the car. Did I laugh? Su Tingyu blinked his big eyes, trying to get by. Chin Chi looked serious and said, "I laughed." Su Tingyu was very innocent and said, "You read it wrong, I didn't laugh." "You remember wrong, you laughed." You laughed, Chin Chi said seriously. Okay, I admit, I smiled, it was just a friendly smile." Su Tingyu forgot about the embarrassment of being caught and said with righteous words. "Friendly." Chin Chi frowned. Su Tingyu nodded and said, Right. Meeting is fate, making friends. Do you understand? Make friends. Qin-Chi repeated, with no expression on his face, as if disdainful. Qin-Chi remained silent and returned to his previous silence. Seeing this, Su Tingyu breathed a sigh of relief. Why is it so tiring? The two walked in front of each other, with a slightly awkward atmosphere. Just as Su Tingyu looked up at the sky for the 5th time, the sky had gradually darkened, and the ordinary forest was gradually shrouded and swallowed by shadows. Unconsciously, the sound of small animals had not been heard in the forest for a long time. Su Tingyu saw Qin-Chi in front stop and walked over, saying, "It's getting dark soon. Let's go back to the campsite." The darkness indicated by the dungeon prompt is likely to indicate any danger in the mountains after dark. In addition, the strange incident mentioned by the driver about Mingshan also occurred after dark, which forced Su Tingyu to be more vigilant. This is only the first day of the dungeon, and Su Tingyu feels that he should be more obscene and not be reckless. But when Su Tingyu saw clearly where Qin-Chi had stopped, his expression paused. In front of Qin-Chi stood a half-meter-high stone tablet, with some strange symbols engraved on its surface. Su Tingyu crouched down and carefully examined the stone tablet. This stone tablet is not like a natural product, but more like an artificial one. There are some small cracks and many uneven weathered marks on the surface, and it may have existed for a long time. But who would be so bored, standing a monument in the mountains? Even if it's a tombstone, there's no earthen mound nearby. Qin-Chi, have you ever seen such a stone tablet in the mountains? Su Tingyu stared at the tablet and asked the person next to him. No one spoke. Su Tingyu twisted his head and looked at the man, Qin-Chi. Unexpectedly, Qin-Chi kept staring at the ground, as if he wanted to make a hole before stopping. Hello. Qin-Chi. Su Tingyu was confused and couldn't figure out what was wrong with this guy. Suddenly, Qin-Chi lifted his head with a hint of light in his eyes and nodded, "Okay, make friends." Su Tingyu. "Ga. You said, make friends, I agree," Qin-Chi repeated again. The skull of Su Tingyu is buzzing. He doesn't know how to make friends all the way, is he? In the midst of lightning and fire, Su Tingyu suddenly remembered that after getting off the car, Qin-Chi looked indifferent and had no attitude in his eyes. In fact, he was wondering why she laughed. Is this person supposed to be, I'm not stupid? Qin-Chi seemed to guess Su Tingyu's inner thoughts at a glance, his eyes serious. When roast about the other party not only guessed it, but also pointed it out frankly. This is very awkward. Fortunately, Su Tingyu has thick skin and can still handle it. Qin-Chi continued to emphasize, I'm not stupid. Su Tingyu quickly laughed and tried to ease the atmosphere. Okay, I know you're not stupid, you. I just have a mental illness. Su Tingyu's voice came to a sudden halt, and he looked at Qin-Chi with a surprised expression on his face. He slowly typed, on his forehead, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Dawn Mountain 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Dawn Mountain 5 Where did Xiaoxia go? Strange, I clearly saw Xiaoxia walking this way. In the forest, several female students were holding dry firewood and chatting as they walked. I'm here. A female voice came from ahead. It's Xiaoxia. Several female students approached and saw the bloody wound on Xiaoxia's arm. Xiaoxia, why are you injured? Does it hurt or not? It's okay, I accidentally fell. Let's go back. Xiaoxia smiled lightly and reached out to embrace the arm of a female student, moving affectionately. A faint muddy smell wafted out, but no one noticed. Let's hurry back to the campsite and help you treat your wound. Okay. Before the sun completely set, Su Tingyu held a small pile of dry firewood and returned to the camp with Qin-Chi. The campsite has already started a fire and is still equipped with modern lighting equipment. Everyone sat on folding stools, forming a circle near the barbecue stove, and the aroma of barbecue wafted in waves. The 5 players, although not very familiar, sat together. Since they are out camping for fun, NPCs come up with various entertainment methods to liven up the atmosphere, singing and dancing, and laughing constantly. Outside the campsite, in a dark and gloomy place where the lights did not shine, even the thriving branches and leaves remained motionless. Under the rendering of the night, there was still a hint of eerie clawing, as if something was peeking in the darkness. A tall and thin male student volunteered and jumped out. "I'll tell you an exciting story." "Speak up, speak up. If it's not stimulating, break your grandson's head." The tall and thin man chuckled and said, "I guess you probably don't know. Mingshan, which we are camping now, wasn't called Mingshan before." "What's that called?" The curiosity of others was aroused. The tall and thin man put away his playful smile, and the flames shone on his face, leaving half a shadow. Mingshan is actually a mountain for mass graves, he said. Over 1,000 years ago, this place was still a depression. At that time, 2 countries were at war. Later, the victorious countries slaughtered all the prisoners of war and civilians of the defeated countries. However, this depression buried hundreds of thousands of people alive and directly filled this place. After thousands of years of changes and the changing stars, this place has formed a mountain. Because hundreds of thousands of people were buried alive below, it is called the Random Burial Mountain. After the story was told, some female students had a look of fear on their faces, while the male students screamed a few times to save face and burst into laughter, clearly not caring. "Damn it. It's not a copy of the horror attribute, is it?" Boss Chow got goosebumps all over and cursed softly. Bald Brother quickly asked, "Boss, what is a horror dungeon?" Boss Chow's face was not very good. There are multiple attributes in dungeons, and horror is one of them. It is said that there are various unnatural phenomena, such as demons and monsters, which are the least desirable attribute among the top 3 players in the forum's voting. If it's really a horror dungeon, you newcomers' luck is really good. I don't know, just a few nonsense words from this NPC. King Gruyan and Bald Brother suddenly panicked. Boss Chow sneered coldly, "Ignorance." Although NPCs automatically block game content revealed by players, in many dungeons, NPCs are usually cannon fodder, but some NPCs are special, including NPCs that can provide players with relevant clues. Are you saying that storytelling NPC is a special NPC? Su Tingyu suddenly asked. Boss Chow looked at Su Tingyu and noticed that the seemingly harmless little girl was not trembling with fear. He slightly put aside his contemptuous heart and said, 9 out of 10. Oh. Su Tingyu said nothing. After the NPCs had eaten and drank enough, they were ready to go back to sleep when 2 female students walked past Su Tingyu holding hands. "Xiaoxia, let me sleep with you tonight. I'm a bit scared." "Okay." Su Tingyu's nose sniffed, as if he could smell a faint, muddy smell. She rubbed her little nose, and the smell disappeared again. Is it an illusion? As we all know, horror is not equal to horror, so it's not really scary at all. It's not something we need. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Dawn Mountain 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Dawn Mountain 6. On the other side, King Gruyan saw that Su Tingyu had not entered the tent for a long time and looked around, thinking that the latter wanted to find someone to sleep with, so she quickly crawled into her own tent. As light as smoke, I don't want to be entangled by a soft and weak little girl. She doesn't seem to have much ability, and if she encounters danger, she may even drag her back. However, as light as smoke, my mind was in a mess, and I inexplicably entered this game. My heart was both flustered and annoyed, tossing and turning, and I couldn't sleep. I don't know how long it took, but I couldn't sleep as lightly as smoke and wanted to go to the bathroom. Using the light of my phone, I looked at the time as lightly as smoke. 1 o'clock in the morning. It's impossible to hold back, at least a few hours before dawn. As light as smoke, it emerged from the tent. The fire has been extinguished, but the lighting tubes are still electrified. The inside of the camp is not very dark, while the outside of the camp is gloomy. There is no suitable place to use the restroom within the campsite, it is as light as smoke and can only leave the campsite. Under the dim light of my phone, I found the bushes and crouched down, as light as smoke. The night wind was a bit cold, as light as smoke, without a coat on, arms exposed, and a bit chilly from the night wind. After solving it, he got up as light as smoke, just turned his head away, and his face suddenly changed drastically. On a tree branch 6 or 7 meters high not far away, there is a dark and blurry shadow. Upon closer inspection, the shadow resembles a human figure, squatting there with hands and feet. But who would come climbing trees in the middle of the night with nothing to do? As light as smoke, I felt a bit creepy. I breathed lightly and my body stiffened, wanting to quietly move away. Click. It seemed as if I had stepped on a withered branch, making a subtle sound that was exceptionally clear in the silent darkness. Light as smoke, with a pale complexion. A cold gaze swept over. Without much time to think, as light as smoke, only one thought remains in my mind. Run. During this time, as light as smoke, he turned around and glanced at the tree branches, and the black shadow disappeared. Sha, biting his lips lightly like smoke, his body trembled uncontrollably. Not right. This sound. On the ground. Behind me. Approaching her. The phone, as light as smoke, was lost midway, and she couldn't see very clearly, only a humanoid silhouette. Continuously approaching her. Light as smoke, just a thought at this moment, run. We're almost at the campsite. But when he saw another black shadow ahead, his legs immediately softened into noodles and he almost fell to the ground. At this moment, the black shadow in front suddenly spoke up, light as smoke. How does Black Shadow know her game nickname? It's a player. Light as smoke, my brain instantly wakes up, and this voice is another female player. Light as smoke, continuing to run wildly, finally seeing the face of the dark figure clearly, it was Tingyu. You don't sleep at night, why are you wandering around? Tingyu stood in place, tilting his head and asked. As soon as she heard it, she couldn't help but burst out and curse, what qualifications do you have to say about me when you come out and wander around? But the cold and malicious gaze behind her made her hold back her words. When passing over Tingyu, it seems like I saw something in her hand, but it's not important. It's important to escape. Perhaps it was a conscientious discovery, as light as smoke, that reminded me. Run quickly. She suddenly ran out several tens of meters, panting heavily as smoke, and at that moment, she noticed that the female player seemed to have not kept up. Curiosity triumphed over fear in an instant and turned back as light as smoke. At that moment, my scalp feels numb. The female player named Angel Sue looked at her in confusion, unaware that a dark shadow was approaching behind her. As light as smoke, I opened my mouth and wanted to remind, but it was too late. The black shadow was already very close to the girl, less than a meter away. With just one hand, it was easy to catch someone and strangle her fragile life. Be careful. Bang. Pop it. Light as smoke petrified in place, his wide mouth completely lost its voice. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Dawn Mountain 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Dawn Mountain 7 20 minutes ago. Tingyu tossed and turned, thinking about his wooden stick hidden outside, estimating that everyone was asleep now, and quietly slipped out of the camp. When returning to the campsite, Tingyu didn't like to stick a long wooden stick, which didn't fit her delicate fairy-like design at all. The place where the wooden stick is hidden is a bit far, and the surroundings are dark. Tingyu almost got lost. Between two trees growing next to each other, Tingyu pulled out a wooden stick. Then, with a wooden stick, I prepared to go back to sleep. As a fairy, staying up late is impossible. As soon as Su Tingyu walked around the campsite, she heard a flurry of footsteps and turned her head curiously. As light as smoke. Su Tingyu had excellent eyesight and recognized it as light as smoke at a glance, so he asked, "Why are you wandering around in the dark at night?" After speaking, Su Tingyu noticed the wooden stick in his hand got it. Su Tingyu wanted to hide the wooden stick, determined not to break the fairy woman's design. Little did she know that it was as light as smoke and didn't stop for a moment. She ran past her in panic, as if some monster was chasing her from behind. "Run quickly." Su Tingyu heard such an inexplicable sentence. "Do you come out for a run without sleeping at night?" Weight loss meow. Who knew, as light as smoke, he turned back to look in his direction, his eyes filled with deep fear, as if witnessing the scene of the murder with his own eyes. Meow, meow, meow. Behind, a cold and gloomy aura struck. Light as smoke, shouting, "Be careful." Su Tingyu reflexively turned around and hit with a stick. Bang! The wooden stick seemed to hit a dark object, and then an incredibly beautiful parabola flashed through the night sky, like a meteor in a flash. A few seconds later, a heavy falling sound rang out from the forest, where no one could see them. Pop it. And then, it's gone. Su Tingyu blinked his big eyes and glanced deep into the forest, then at his wooden stick. Later, he realized that he didn't take the stick and lightly patted his chest with his small paw, saying, "What kind of thing? It scares people to death." Turning my head, I realized that it was as light as smoke and had petrified into a sculpture. Cough. Su Tingyu walked over and preemptively said, "Let's go back to sleep." After a while, as light as smoke, he finally broke free from his wandering soul state and moved his mouth, saying, "Well, that thing." What? Where is there anything?" Su Tingyu opened her innocent big eyes. "Aren't you tired? Don't you want to sleep? Do you want to age? Do you want endocrine disorders?" Light as smoke, her mind was in chaos. Is she already asleep now? Actually, she's just dreaming. Su Tingyu sighed and looked at the light and smoky gaze, as if looking at an disobedient child. Go back to sleep now. If she doesn't leave, she can only kindly help. Knock unconscious. Carry it away. Light as smoke, suddenly feeling a cool sensation on the forehead. The girl in front of her had a harmless face, but she had an indescribable strangeness. I'll go back now. Go back to sleep. Light as smoke, afraid to stay any longer, ran into the camp. There were lights around, and the small heart that was as light as smoke, jumping up and down, gradually calmed down. I couldn't help but look back, only to see that the girl didn't walk towards the campsite, but instead entered the dark forest, and her figure completely disappeared. Feeling as light as smoke, I shuddered and lost all thought. I quickly crawled back to my tent. On the other end, Su Tingyu searched and searched, only finding a glowing phone that seemed as light as smoke. Where did it fly? Su Tingyu looked left and right, but didn't see a single strand of hair. Su Tingyu, who is sleazy and unrestrained, sighed with regret. She is inexperienced in doing this kind of thing for the first time. Let's learn a lesson this time. Next time, try not to fly, just hit the ground. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Dawn Mountain 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Dawn Mountain 8 The second day of the dungeon, in the morning. Boss Chow came out of the tent, feeling a bit mentally weak and obviously not sleeping well. The bald guy who slept in the same tent with him slept like a dead pig all night, snoring. It's strange if his sleep quality is good. Boss Chow turned his head and saw that some NPCs had already risen, while the tents of the other 3 players were tightly set up without any movement. The newcomer is indeed a newcomer, and there is still a mind to sleep in the dungeon, Chow boss mocked in his heart. Hi, Boss Chow. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind. Boss Chow turned his head and saw Su Tingyu with a sleepy face and eyelids fighting up and down. You didn't sleep well last night. Mr. Chow's tone was harsh, and he felt his face was a bit swollen. So, I despised Su Tingyu from the bottom of my heart. The newcomer was indeed a newcomer, and on the first night, I was so scared that I couldn't sleep. Yes, Su Tingyu replied casually. One night, Su Tingyu wandered around the campsite, wanting to see if he could meet any more big treasures. Unfortunately, there is nothing. The fairy doesn't stay up late, at most it's all overnight. After Su Tingyu finished greeting, he crawled back into the tent without looking back. To catch up. Noon. Su Tingyu emerged from the tent. Su Tingyu woke up from hunger, otherwise she would have slept until the sun set before waking up. Just thinking of finding something to eat, he held a large bowl of warm food as light as smoke and stuffed it into Su Tingyu's hand along with chopsticks. This is leftover food. Lightly as smoke, she said awkwardly. When she came out in the morning, she saw her phone on the ground in front of the tent. Who helped her find it? There's no need to think about it. Light as smoke, turn around and leave. Su Tingyu looked at the food in the bowl, and from any angle, it didn't seem like it was leftover, but rather like it was pre-selected. Su Tingyu's stomach made a tiny gurgling sound, and she picked up a bite of food with chopsticks, causing her cheeks to bulge. It's really fragrant. Upon hearing Su Tingyu's sigh, he walked as light as smoke faster, and in the blink of an eye, everyone was gone. Because he was hungry, Su Tingyu ate the fish very quickly and licked his bowl clean in a few minutes. After burping heavily, Su Tingyu prepared to take matters seriously. The stone tablet I saw yesterday, Su Tingyu was quite concerned and planned to look for a second one. The number of NPCs in the camp has decreased significantly, so they should have all gone out. Su Tingyu left the camp. Yesterday, he was heading east. Today, he will try heading west. In the forest, when Su Tingyu saw some familiar stones, his eyes lit up. Su Tingyu approached and found that the stone was incomplete, only half of the tombstone from yesterday. Half of the stone tablets have strange symbols carved on them that are very blurry and almost indistinct. Weeds even grow in the gaps of the stone tablets. Is there any difference between a complete stone tablet and an incomplete one? And what would be the purpose of these stone tablets appearing here? Su Tingyu found several stone tablets in other places, some of which were relatively intact, while others were mostly missing and overgrown with weeds, almost missing their site. Overall, Su Tingyu found that almost no complete stone tablet could be found on the west side of Dawn Mountain. The relatively complete stone tablet discovered yesterday was on the east side of the mountain. And their campsite is located closer to the east because they come up from the east when they go up the mountain. It was getting dark, and Su Tingyu was preparing to return to the campsite when she met two female students halfway through. Yen, why do you have a strange smell on you? Do you have it? Yesterday Xiaoxia also seemed to have it on her body. You slept with her last night, didn't you get her scent? Ah. Well. Then I won't sleep with her tonight. How about I sleep with you? I'm a bit afraid of sleeping alone. Well, don't sleep next to me. Su Tingyu paused in his footsteps and watched as the two female students left behind. I suddenly remembered when that thing appeared last night, as if I could smell a hint of muddy smell. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Dawn Mountain 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors.